Hi everyone, myself Dr. M. Lakshmi Prasad, working as an associate professor in the Department of Data Science in Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. So in this video, I'm going to discuss about graphics. So this is one of the method of presenting data, right? So in previous video I discussed about what are the various ways of presenting and representing data through tables. I explained. Now in this video I'm going to discuss about what is the way for presenting the data through graphics and what are different types of methods that are available for representing the data. So normally this is the one of the best way what I said previously, because since based on the data what we get, suppose if the data is very limit is having some 10 lines of code, better it is represented in the form of table. So when we go for graphics and then diagrams, that one I can explain this in this video. Suppose if I am going to maintain the large amount of data, then graphs is one of the best method to represent it. So in order to make the reader or visuals can understand it very clearly. And advantages of these graphics will be, and they are attractive and they give a brief idea of the data, and they can easily understood by common man, and they can able to facilitate the comparison of various characteristics, and the impressions can also be created by them or long lasting, and the theorems and results of statistic can be visualized through using graphics. So these are some of the advantages. So first one should be they're attractive. So attractive in the sense whatever the data I'm representing in the graph, so definitely they can understand very easily and attractive, right? And these can be able to give the bird's eye view of the data. That is the other advantage, and they can easily understood by the common man very easy. Even though uneducated people can understand by if we are going to represent the data in the form of graphs, and this can also can able to facilitate comparisons of various characteristics. So I can able to compare the data and very easily through the graphs, and the impression can also be created by long lasting, and the theorems on results of statistic can also be visualized through graphs. That is the advantage here. And limitations, so the limitations will be they are visual aids, and they cannot be considered as alternatives for numerical data, and through theorems and results could easily visualized by diagrams and graphs, and mathematical rigor cannot be brought into them. And the diagrams and graphs are not accurate as the tabular data, as the tabular data can be used for the further analysis. And by diagrammatic and graphical representation, the observers can be easily understood, but it is possible to create a wrong impressions also using the diagrams and graphs also. So right, so these are the visual aids. So the limitations have to be followed before going to draw this graphics and all, and then they cannot be considered an alternative for the numerical data also. Though the theorems and results can be easily visualized by the diagrams and graphs, but mathematical rigor cannot be brought into them. And the diagrams and graphs are not accurate as the tabular data. So by seeing the graphs, you can able to predict what the value of exactly it is. By see, if I'm going to see this through table, then it should be best way. And by diagrammatics and graphical representations, observers can be easily understood, and so it may also lead to some wrong impressions also through the graphs. So what are the rules you have to be followed for drawing the graphs and the diagrams? So the very first one is that choose the form of diagrams and graphs which is capable of representing the given set of data. So for right, so even though I can able to represent the data what I get from multiple source, what will do, I can able to represent in the form of text, I can able to show, and I can also be shown in the form of table, and I can also be able to show them in the gram of graphs. But still we are having different types of diagrams and different types of graphs are available. So what is the best graph to represent the current data? yeah, that one it had to be identified very clearly. And very first one is the title. So title means which can able to give the information about the diagram as well as the graphs what it contains. So the title should able to give some brief information about the diagrams as well as the graphs. And scale, so selection of scale should be neither too small and neither too large also. The scale should be precise, and the size of unit as well as what is going to be represented. Suppose example number of persons in thousands, I can able to represent it. So that should be the scale. So the scale all the time should be neither too small and neither too large also. And neatness, so neatness is also one of the factor had to be considered before going to draw the graphs. And so all the time what are the graphs should be seen very neat. So that is one of the factor also. And attractive, so attractive is the another feature that we have to be maintained, since different types of lines or shades or colors etc that can be used to make the pictures more attractive. So instead of representing the lines or shades or colors, I can able to make the pictures to be more attractive simply by make use of black color is sufficient. But if I'm going to draw the lines in different lines of different colors, so it will enables the user to make the pictures very effective. And then originality, so originality should also be helps the observer to see the details with accuracy. So the originality should also be good, we have to maintain. So it should be helps the observer, instead of presenting the duplicate data what we have to do is if you are going to present the original data, so the observer what they are doing and what they are seeing should be we should able to see the details with accuracy. And the simplicity also should be maintained. So the very good diagram depends upon each case with which the observer can interpret it. So what is the diagram we're having. So simplicity is a very important factor, and so that the observer can able to easily understood and easy interpretation. And economy, so economy means the cost and labor should also be excised by drawing the diagram. So these are the some of the rules we have to be followed for drawing the graphs and diagrams, right? So choose the form of the diagram or graph that should be suitable for the current data, and maintain the title for each and every graph or title. And then scales should be neither too small and neither too large. That should be they have to be seen. And neatness is also another factor. And then attractive, originality, simplicity, and economy. So these are the all the things we have to be follow while drawing the graphs. So what is the difference between the graphs and diagrams? Let me explain that. So in order to construct a graph paper is generally used whereas the diagram is to be constructed on a plain paper. So what is the graph? Suppose if I'm going to construct a graph actually, so we are going to make use of this graph paper. But whereas if I'm going to draw the diagram, so we should just a plain paper is sufficient to construct it actually. And the graph should able to represent the mathematical relationship between the two variables, whereas diagram does not represent any kind of relationship between them, right? So one of the difference is that the graph should able to represent the mathematical relationship between the two variables, right? So if I'm going to take a variable x and y, so based on the values I can able to construct it, right? Whether it may be bar graph or pie chart, whatever it may be, or histogram like that. So based on that, so you're able to relationship between the x and y. Whereas if I'm going to draw the diagrams, right, so it should not maintain any kind of relationship between the variables. And another difference is that the graphs are more appropriate than the diagrams to represent the frequency distribution and time series. Right. So suppose if I'm going to represent some frequency distributions problem as well as the time series problems. So graphs is the only way to represent it, and the diagrams are not at all used to represent the frequency distribution. So this is the drawback of this diagram. And next one is that the diagrams are the more attractive to the eyes, whereas the graphs are not but much suitable for the publicity and propaganda, right? So this is the one of the disadvantage of graphs. So the diagram should be more attractive and by seeing the graph, that is the another advantage related to the diagrams, but it's not suitable for the graphs or for the publicity and propaganda. And next one is that diagrams. The diagrams does not add anything to the meaning of the data, but hence they are not helpful in the analysis of the data. This is the disadvantage of the diagrams. So what are the diagrams you are maintaining? It does not add anything to the meaning of the data actually, and that's why it is not helpful in the analysis of the data. And next one is the graphs. So the graphs are very much used by the statisticians and the researcher workers in their analysis, where the diagrams are not going to be used by the statisticians, and the research work carried out by the researchers in their analysis. So these are the some of the differences between graphs and then diagrams actually, right? So in order to construct a graph, so we need a graph paper, and to construct a diagram, plain paper is sufficient. That is one first difference. And the next difference is that graph represent mathematical relationship, whereas the diagram does not represent it. And graphs are more appropriate than diagrams to represent frequency distribution and then the time series. So this is the best advantage. And the diagrams are the more attractive to the eyes. That is the only advantage that comes to the picture of the diagrams, whereas graphs that should not supportable. And the graph diagrams do not add anything to the meaning of the data, and they are not going to be helpful in analysis of the. The next one is that the graphs are very much used by the statisticians and the research workers in their analysis. So what is the let me show what are the different types of graphs we are having for presenting data and different types of diagrams for presenting the data. So if I construct the graphs, so let it be for the first one is that histogram is the first method of graph representation, and frequency curve, and then frequency polygon is the third one, and occlusive is the fourth one, and line graph. So these are the 5 types of graphs we are having for representing a data, right? Suppose when it comes to diagrams here, so the diagram should be bar diagram and then bar diagram and pie diagram only we are having. Again, this bar diagram is going to be divided further like simple bar, multiple bar, component bar, percentage bar, and deviation bar. Like this, we are having the 3 different types of bar diagrams we are having. Okay. Let me show the graphs, so how the graphs will look like. So this is the bar graph what we are having, and this should be the line graph, and this should be also be represent the curve or view like this. So we're having like this, we're having different types of graphs that are available for presenting the data. So the very first one is that histogram. So histogram is also a bar chart like diagram, but we should not maintain any kind of gaps or space in between one bar to the another bar. So that is the difference between the histogram and then bar diagram. So if I'm going to maintain some spaces in between the bars, then it should be a bar diagram. If I'm not going to maintain any kind of space in between them, and that should be becomes a histogram actually. And it is going to be represented by a set of rectangular bars, and variables here should be a class, so that should be taken along the x-axis, and frequency is going to be taken on the xy axis actually. So within the class intervals as base here, so the rectangles with height proportions to the class frequency are going to be drawn here, and the set of rectangular bars so obtain gives this histogram, right? So within the class intervals as the base, the rectangles with high proportion of the flag frequency are going to be drawn. So that is the way of representing the histogram here. So notice that the total area of rectangle in histogram represents the total frequency, and if the frequency distribution has an inclusive of class intervals, then they should be converted into exclusive type. So this is the notes that have to be noted regarding the histogram, right? So notice that the total area of rectangles in histogram represent the total frequency, and if the frequency distribution has inclusive class intervals, then it should be converted into exclusive type. And the mode of distribution can be obtained from the histogram only. So this is the example what I'm showing, histogram. So we are having a table, one column is height and frequency. So the number of persons in between 145 to 150, 150 to 155. So like this I have to maintain the class interval here. So in between them how many number of people are available, that should be the frequency here. Then let me take it to 59941. And now I am going to convert how to construct this histogram here. So let me take these class intervals as 145 to 150, 150 to 155, 155, 160. Like this I have to take the class interval. So very first one is 2, right? So 140 to 162 class interval. So the frequency should be taken on y-axis and height is on x-axis here. So 2, so I have to draw this. So 150 to 150, how much it is? 5. So I have to draw up to 5. And then 150 to 169. So what is this? 9. So that should I have to draw here. So next one 4, 9, again 160 to 165. So same thing I can able to get it. And 4 is the next value and 1 is the, like this I have to construct the histogram, right? And then mode of distribution can be obtained from this histogram also. So like, right, so how they can able to get this mode of distribution. So in between the middle what I am having here, so that one is going to be subjected to the middle of that histogram, that should be 35. So 35 is the mode of the distribution value where I can able to get that histogram. And next one is the frequency curve. So by drawing this frequency curve, what you have to do is the variable is going to be taken along the x-axis and frequencies are going to be taken on y-axis here. And the variables what I have take should be x-axis, let it be 0, 2, 4, 6. So these are the variables, and then frequency. And the frequency rate what we are having should be on y-axis here. So the frequencies are going to be plotted again the class in mid values, and these points are going to be joined by the smooth curve. So what is the frequencies I'm plotted actually along the class middle values? So this one should go on joined by the frequency here. And no sir, the curve so obtained should be the frequency curve, and the total area under the frequency curve represents the total frequency. So right, so the frequency curve is nothing but the variables are going to be taken in x-axis and frequency should be y-axis. Normally you know that everyone. Then frequencies are going to be plotted again the class middle values, right? And these points are going to be joined by the smooth curve. The curve what should be obtained should be the smooth curve only, right? And the total area should be calculated for the frequency curve should represent the total frequency. So right, so in between the class interval what should be having this. So like this I can able to construct the frequency curve. Let me show example. So this is the values I'm having. So see here. So the marks obtained should be taken on x-axis and the number of students I'm taking on y-axis. Suppose in the 0 to 10, how many number of students are having marks obtained 10. So first I have to draw the bar here. And so the number of students in between 10 to 20, how many? Let it be 16. So I have to construct the under rectangle bar. Similarly, I have to draw a number of students in between 20 and 30. So for that it should be 20. So I have to construct another bar. And similar 30 to 40, I have 20 same. So same thing, I have to construct another bar. And I have to construct 22, right? So construct it. So like this, I have to first construct the histogram. Then only I can able to get the frequency curve. So once the histogram is going to be constructed like this, and consider the middle part of this bars here, and try to join this all the middle points what we are having. Okay, like this I have to draw, and then finally remove this bars and all. So the curve what we obtain should be the frequency curve. So that should be the frequency curve what we are having. Like this, you have to construct this frequency curve based on the values what you are having. And like, what is the frequency polygon also? So here the variables are going to be taken along the same thing, and frequency is also going to be taken along the y-axis, and the frequency class frequencies are going to be plotted again in the class middle values, and these points are going to be joined by the straight line, right? And the figures so obtained should be the frequency polygon. The total area of the frequency curve should be the represent the frequency total frequency. So the frequency curve and polygon should also be same, but what we have to do is we have to join through lines here. So through the lines I can able to obtain, and here also I can able to take this class frequencies on x-axis, and the frequency on y-axis I have to be considered. So let me take the example here. So what is the table shows the annual salary of 1,000 workers in a company. So in between the salary of 5,000 to 10,000, how many? 5 members. And in between 1,000 to 15,000, 53 members are here. And for 15,000 to 20,000, in between them should be 21, 22, 25, 18, 25, 33. So these are the values I'm having. I have to construct polygon to the current data. So how to construct it? So take a salary on x-axis here, and consider number of workers on y-axis. So salary in between 5,000 to 10,000. So middle part, right? So how many? 5p. So try to mark this. And similarly construct 10,000 to 15,000, in between should be 53. So I have marked this. And 15,000 to 20,000, 21. So 21 mark this. And 22,000 to 25,000, 18. So like this. And 25 to 33. So like this, I have to first construct all this, and all the points should be joined through a straight line. So the curve what we obtained, it should be the frequency a polygon. So everything should have to draw in the form of graphs only, right? So that should be the example of frequency polygon. And next one is that ogive. So what is an ogive? So ogive is the smooth graph between cumulative frequency plotted against the values of the variable. That should be the class limits. So ogive is the smooth graphs that should be obtained with cumulative frequency plotted against the values of the variables. And the class limits are going to be taken along the x-axis, and CF are going to be taken along the y-axis. So right, so class limits are going to take an x-axis, and the CF is going to be taken, should be cumulative frequency, should be on y-axis here. And there are two types of ogives, like less than cumulative frequency curve and less than ogive is the one type of the ogive, and greater than frequency curve and greater than ogive should be the frequency curve. So like this, we're having two types of ogives we are having. So less than say CF and greater than CF ogive. So what is the thing we have to be seen now? So the variable values is taken on x-axis, and CF value should be along y-axis, and it should be less than CF are going to plot it against the representative variable values, and these points are going to be joined with a smooth line, and the resultant what we have less than should be ogive. right? So the variable values is taken on x-axis and cumulative frequency on y-axis. So if that value is less than cumulative frequency, then we have to plot again the each and every respective variable values. Then these points are going to be joined by the smooth curve, and the resulting graph what we obtain should be the OGIF. And grid then CF curve. So here also the same, the class variable should be taken on x and the CF should be taken on y axis, and the grid and CF are going to be plotted again the corresponding variable values, and these points are going to be just smooth curve, and the resultant graph is the grid then okay. So right, so the two ogives are going to be drawn together with a common axis, and the point of intersection of two ogives this gives the median point of the distribution normally. So what is the points obtained of two ogives? So the intersection of these two ogives able to give the median distribution of the median point of distribution, and the ogives are going to represent the locate partition values like median, quartiles, deciles, and percentiles. So these are the ways of locating the partition value through values. And this is the simple view of OGIV. So let me take the marks and x-axis here and the number of students on this, and the marks I have to note of 7 for 20, how much I can able to get 17 members, and 30 to 50, 40 in between them. Let me take 21 and 43, 53 like this I have to draw, and again 51, 57, 60 is the underway. So like this I can able to represent the ogives in a similar fashion. So what I have to do, I have to note down. So once the two lines are going to be intersected, so that should be the intersection point should be the less than ogive this curve, and they should be lower more than ogive. So the intersection in between the 2 points should be the uh, median point of the distribution. So this should be the median point of the distribution. So what is the curve of less than ogive and greater than ogive? So the point of intersection able to give this median point of distribution. So just me show like this. So this is the one ogive less than ogive, and this is another greater than ogive, and the first intersection should be the median. That should be the value. And next one is that line graph. So line graph is the time series graph we are having. So these line graphs are going to be used to display the comparison between the two variables which are plotted on x and y axis, right? So if I want to make the comparison between the two variables, then have to make use of this x axis and y axis. So the x axis represents the measures of time, whereas the y axis represents the measures of quality here. So the measure of time should be on x-axis and measures of quality should be on y-axis. So these things are going to be organized to present data in clear manner, shows the relationship between the data. And the line graphs able to display the change in direction also, and then it also shows the trend of event occurring over the period of time to know whether it is increased or decreased. So example, I am cancelled, it's like this, I want to make it. So at the time I have to make use of this line graph or time series graph. So line graphs are going to be used to display the comparison between two variables which are going to be plotted on x axis and y axis, and the x axis are going to be represents the measures of time, whereas y axis is able to represent the measures of quality, and they're going to be organized and present the data in clear manner, shows the relationship between the data, and the line graph displays the change in direction, whereas it can able to shows the trend of event occurring and period of time to know whether it is increase or decrease. I am more considered like this. So this is an example of line graph. So day one, and this is the form value I'm getting, patients, foreign heat on y-axis, and duration of admission, temperature, and day two, this one, antibodies, folic acid, like this. So the points what I drawn should be the line graph, and this should also be a time series graph, right? So the time series graph is nothing but a line graph. So I would like to know and what is the retail prices of petrol, diesel, along with the price of the crude oil I want to represent it. So this is the color which can able to represent diesel, and yellow is the color which is going to represent petrol, and blue is the indication Indian crude basket. So and by seeing this diagram, I can able to understand what is the fluctuations of this petrol and diesel with respect to the crude oil. So the petrol is almost all goes high today, and diesel also almost all equal with a difference of 5 and compared to the crude oil in between the years of 2004 to 2018. Now it is 2022, so it should be very high. So like this, I can able to represent different types of graphs what we're having. So graphs is the way we can able to present that data in very attractive manner. And advantage is that all the graphs should be attractive, and we should also give the bird's eye view of the data, and which can also be easily understood by the common man, and which can also be facilitate various characteristics, and the impressions also going to be created by them in a long lasting, and theorems and results or statistics can also be visualized through using graphics. And limitation should be they are all our visual aids, right? So they cannot be considered alternatives for numerical data, and through though the theories and results could be easily visualized by diagrams and graphs, so the mathematical rigor cannot be brought in, and the graphs and diagrams are not accurate as the tabular data, and by through diagrammatic and graphical misinterpretation, the observers may lead to wrong directions and get wrong impressions. So what rules we have to be followed for drawing graphs and diagrams should be, so the first you have to choose what type of diagram or what type of graph is suitable according to the current data, and then we have to be identify what should be the title, and we have to identify what should be the scale and neatness, attractive, originality, simplicity, and economy. So these are some of the factors what we have to be considered before going to presenting the data through graphs. And let me show the exact differences between graphs and diagrams. So in order to construct a graph, definitely we need a graph paper, whereas for drawing diagrams it is not needed. Just a plain paper is sufficient, and graphs can also represent a mathematical relationship between two variables where a diagram does not, and the graph should also be not appropriate when compared to diagrams to represent frequency distribution and time series, and the diagrams are the more attractive way to the eyes, and should also be best suited for publicity and propaganda, and the diagrams cannot do any kind of thing to the meaning of the data, and so it is not helpful in analysis of the data also. And most of graphs are going to be used by the statisticians and research workers in their analysis. And the graphs should be some of the examples will be histogram, frequency curve, frequency polygon, ogives, and line graphs. These are the examples of the graphs. And for next video I can able to explain this diagrams of presenting data. That should be bar diagram and simple bar, multiple composite, percentage, deviation bar, and then pie diagram. So the graph should be of types like bar graph, line graph, and then ogive, etc. So histogram. So histogram is going to be represented by set of variables on set of bars, and the variables class should be taken on x-axis and frequency is going to be taken on y-axis. So the width of class interval we have to maintain so that the rectangle with height proportional to class can be drawn, and the set of rectangle bars, so option should be able to give the histogram. So this is the way. So one column is height, another column is frequency. So based on the class intervals I have to know the frequency values and draw the rectangle. So that should be the histogram. So what is the middle point that we obtain this histogram? That should be able to call as mode of distribution that can be obtained from the histogram. And next one should be frequency curve. So the variables are going to take along x-axis and frequencies on a y-axis, and these frequencies are going to be plotted on the class intervals. So the points what we are going to be joined should be the smooth curve, and the curve is one able to call as frequency curve. And this is the example. And frequency polygon almost all same, but where we have to do is we have to draw lines in between by joining the dots of the graph. And ogive, so ogive is also a smooth graph. So with the cumulative frequency had to be plotted here with respect to variables. So for that, what you have to do, the class limits are going to be taken on x-axis along, and the CF should be taken on y-axis. So there are two types of ogives, like less than CF curve and greater than CF curve. So less than of the curve should be same. So the variable class limits are going to take on x-axis and cumulative frequency is going to be taken on y-axis. So the less than CF are going to be plotted. Then the points what we joined by smooth curve, that should be less than ogive or greater than ogive. And the cross section of two ogives, what we call, should be median value. And the line graph should be a time series graph, so where you can able to make the difference or comparison between two variables. Then how to make use of this line graph and time series graph. So x-axis should be the measured time and y-axis should be measured quantity, and they can able to organize the present data in clear manner, which also shows the relationship between the data. And this is the view of the line graph and an example. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.